Today, we're taking a deep dive into one of the Atari 2600's original launch titles, Street Racer. Now, on the surface, yeah, it's a pretty simple, blocky racing game, but what if I told you that hidden inside its tiny 2 kilobytes of code is this incredible story of technical genius, corporate throwdowns, and a revolution that literally changed the video game industry as we know it? You want to know what this is? $2.40. That's a pretty common price for a loose cartridge of Street Racer today. I mean, for less than a cup of coffee, you can own a real piece of video game history, something made all the way back in 1977. It's so common, so cheap, that most people just walk right by it. But that's the big question, isn't it? What if this little, unassuming piece of plastic is so much more than a forgotten game? What if it's actually a quiet monument to a programmer who not only pushed the Atari's hardware to its absolute breaking point, but also helped light the fuse on a rebellion for developers' rights? To really get it, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning. See, Street Racer was one of the original 9 games you could buy on day one when the Atari VCS launched on September 11th, 1977. It was right there next to the legendary pack-in game Combat, trying to sell the world on this brand new, kind of crazy idea, playing lots of different games on one machine in your living room. And get this, the whole game, every last bit and byte, was made by one person, a brilliant engineer named Larry Kaplan. And the game's reason for being wasn't some grand artistic vision. Not at all. It was basically a corporate order. Atari needed a game that showed off their new analog paddle controllers, and Kaplan got the assignment. And okay, this is where the story really gets juicy, because the environment where Street Racer was born, well, it was a total pressure cooker of amazing innovation on one side, and just this growing resentment on the other. So let's talk about the man behind the code and the massive conflict he was about to face. You have to realize, in 1977, there were no development teams. Larry Kaplan was the team. He was the designer, the programmer, the artist, if you can call those blocks art. He even created the sound effects and did all the final bug testing himself. Every single piece of this game came directly from his brain. But even with all that creative work, programmers at Atari were treated like anonymous factory workers. And this quote, this just says it all. It's famously attributed to Atari president Ray Kassar, who allegedly told his top engineers that to their faces. He saw them as totally interchangeable cogs in a machine. And the difference between what they gave and what they got was just staggering. An internal memo actually showed that just 4 programmers, Kaplan included, were responsible for 60% of Atari's cartridge sales. That's $60 million in 1 year. And for that, what did they get? About a $20,000 salary, 0 loyalties, and absolutely no credit. Their names were nowhere. You can imagine that didn't sit well for long. Yeah, that situation was a ticking time bomb. All that disrespect and the lack of recognition, it was leading directly to one of the most important moments in the history of video games. So, completely fed up, Larry Kaplan and 3 of his buddies, David Crane, Alan Miller, and Bob Whitehead, did the unthinkable. They quit. This gang of 4, as they'd come to be known, just walked away from the biggest video game company on the planet to go do their own thing. And what they created was Activision, the world's first ever independent third-party game developer. They completely flipped the script. They set up a new system where programmers got royalties for their sales and, for the very first time, got their names proudly printed on the box. The whole industry was changed forever, and the seeds for all of it were planted right back in the development of games like Street Racer. But believe it or not, the corporate drama is only half of what makes this little cartridge so cool. We need to switch gears and look at the technical side, because what Kaplan managed to squeeze into that tiny 2 kilobyte ROM chip was pure programming wizardry. Okay, check this out, because this is just genius. The Atari hardware could officially only draw 2 main player sprites. So to get 4 cars on the screen for multiplayer, Kaplan got really creative. He took the console's other little graphical objects, the tiny missiles and the ball, and used some clever hardware tricks to blow them up in size, turning them into 2 extra cars. And the result? Rock-solid 4-player action with absolutely 0 flicker, which was a massive technical achievement back then. All right, here's another secret that's been hiding in plain sight for decades. Anyone who's ever owned an Atari 2600 knows it's a mono console. You get 1 channel of sound, and that's it. That's just a fact of the hardware, right? Well, the truth is, buried deep in the silicon, the TI chip, That's the custom chip that's the heart and soul of the Atari. It actually has two completely separate independent audio channels. From day one, it was designed to be able to produce stereo sound. And here it is. Larry Kaplan actually programmed Street Racer to use them. He sent the sounds of the cars in the left lane to one audio channel and the sounds of the cars in the right lane to the other. This game has true native stereo sound that nobody heard. Why? Because in a last-minute cost-cutting decision, the Atari hardware team just wired both audio outputs together into a single mono jack on the console's motherboard. Amazing, right? Even something as simple as the game's timer is a little bit of art. Ever wonder why the round is 2 minutes and 16 seconds? It seems so random, but it's not. It's the direct result of some super efficient binary math. See, using round binary numbers was the absolute best way to save precious memory when coding a timer. And the math just happened to work out to 136 seconds. The hardware's limitations were literally defining the rules of the game. So when you put all of this together, the corporate drama, the technical hacks, the hidden features, you start to realize that Street Racer left behind a much richer, more complex legacy than anyone ever gives it credit for. It was way more than just a simple little racing game. I mean, first off, just appreciate the sheer value Kaplan crammed in here. This one little 2K cartridge doesn't have one game. It has 6 totally different modes. You've got your normal street race, you've got a slalom mode, a game where you're dodging boulders, a jet shooter, even a weirdly complex collectathon called Scoop Ball. For 1977, that was an insane amount of variety on one cart. And that really brings us to its true, quiet legacy. That number cruncher mode? It was one of the very first examples of what we'd now call edutainment. The frustration that built up during its development was a direct spark for the creation of Activision, which changed everything for developers. And the code itself, it's like a technological Rosetta Stone, showing us these brilliant, pure programming tricks from the absolute dawn of the console era. It really makes you think, doesn't it? We just pulled back the curtain on a story of corporate rebellion and hidden technology, all tucked away inside one of the simplest Atari games ever made. And it kind of leaves you with one last question. If a $2 cartridge like Street Racer is holding all of this, what other incredible secrets are just waiting to be discovered in the code of the other classics sitting on your shelf right now?